Welcome to another Samson sit down. And guess what? We have Izzy Gutierrez. Can't believe how lucky I am to get 50 minutes with you, Izzy. So first of all, thank you.
You're welcome.
It is
My
not
pleasure.
often that we do sit downs from time to time. In the past 5 years, I don't know how many we've done, maybe 50 or 75. Not that many. And I wanted to talk to you especially because you and I had never worked together
Right.
until just recently.
And somehow I'm still in the top 50 of your
Which-
interview guest list.
Well, because you have a story that is important for me to talk about because on Nothing Personal, we'll talk about anything. And if there's something you want to talk about, just stop. And if Coca gets upset, he'll cut the show and that'll be that. But you have a unique position, both with Meadowlark, your career, ESPN, all the things you've done, representing basically so many different groups of individuals. You're a sports fan. You're very open about life, off the court, on the court. And I want to understand when that decision gets made, when you are willing to be this open, because the job that we have, the characters we play, it is very, very intrusive to our lives. And it's harder for some than others. And I'm accused of being robotic often. And I want to know what you're accused of being in your mind as you evaluate the decisions you made to be who you are.
So it's interesting. So I'll take you through sort of my career path and sort of how it lines up with my life as it was going. And because when you ask the question, I don't really have an answer for when I decided it. So maybe if we talk through it, I will have something that I point to. But early on, and this is all I wanted to be coming out of college, was I think it was the dean of the journalism school at University of Florida asked me what I wanted to be in 10 years. And I said, well, I guess I want to be a beat writer for an NBA team at a major metropolitan newspaper. And I use the word metropolitan.
Showing your age.
And I was that within 10 months of graduating. So then I was just kind of like, whoa, I need to reassess because this is all happening fast. And so, 2 years after that, I am basically what I thought was my dream job. I was covering the Miami Heat for the Miami Herald, the hometown paper that I grew up reading. And I would read Steve Weish. I would read Dan Le Batard. I'd read Cody, Linda Roberts, and everybody. And now all of a sudden I'm working here covering this team. And it was not really a sense of fame because I'm not really a sort of, I don't love fame. I don't love attention. I sort of want the attention away from me for the most part.
Strange profession you chose.
I know, it's
by
funny.
the way.
But this is where I started as a writer with a byline with just a name, almost anonymous, right? Like, unless you know who I am, unless you see me down the road on some sort of TV show, I could be anybody. I'm just a name. The more I started doing it, the more I started making these appearances on local TV, national TV, etc. And then it was like, okay, it's not just a name anymore. Now people can put a face to the name if they really wanted to. And then it's just like, oh, I might get recognized here or there. Now, tie that to, at the time, me being the opposite of open. I was closeted. I was, very much into just my job, my handful of friends that didn't make me uncomfortable in any way in sort of social settings, just kind of rolled with things. And I didn't want to be, and maybe this is where my lack of wanting the attention, I don't want people's eyes on me if I'm trying to hide something, right? If I'm not entirely who I am, just worry about the work, don't worry about me, okay? And so as I keep going through this career, it's like, okay, now I'm a columnist at the Miami Herald. Now my picture's on there. So now everybody locally, if they read the sports section, could put a face to a name. And then it's just like, okay, now I'm in my 20s, maybe early 30s, 20s actually. And it's, okay, when am I going to have to confront this? Like, my job became what pushed me out of my personal, closet, because it was, people know who I am. People, like, if I show up on TV one day and all of a sudden I've got a wedding ring, they're going to be like, well, who are you married to? You haven't said anything. And then all of a sudden it's like going down this road. So I would keep things private. I wouldn't really have anything. It's not like I was holding back, David. It's not like it's not like I had this secret life that I just wasn't telling people about. It was, this is me. This is who I am. There is no dating life, really. to me, maybe one or two here or there, but there's no dating life. So it's just, hey, this is me. But I obviously
Why is there
knew I
no
had
dating life? You're in Miami.
Well, because I was
because-
closeted and I was pretending, right? And so
But
it's
you're
like,
not alone. There's plenty of people who are doing that. They do it together.
well, there's no meetings. Like,
It's not
like
friends
I'm-
of Bill W. But is it not true? And forgive the ignorance.
I don't know. The answer is I don't know because I'm just floating around on my own. Like I don't. Like yeah, it was not to use a Dan phrase, but it wasn't pre-internet. Like I could go online and have, but where, with whom, how do I start these conversations? Do I need that? I was perfectly satisfied with my life. Like I was okay. But then there was, and so we have to combine the personal with the professional here. But like, so at this point, I'm in, doing this for a while now. And yes, I am sort of negotiating with myself in the back of my mind saying, all right, when am I going to come out? It has to happen at some point. Do I incorporate my job with it somehow? I don't know.
But your fame's increasing at this time. Your Q rating has to be increasing at this time. Are we saying that those weren't related? That the timeline of you deciding to be your true self and the timeline of your fame increasing, were those not in tandem?
They were in this respect. I always said to myself, if people are going to judge you, let them judge you for your work first and your professionalism or everything that you do first, and then hit them with something that it's just like, ooh, I didn't know that about him. And let that be what makes your decision or changes your decision. If it changes your decision, then you're like, yeah, you're kind of a jerk because you already liked me for my sports takes, for my whatever professionalism, for my writing, and now all of a sudden something personal about me comes out and you're going to change your opinion. Well, you're showing yourself. You're telling me who you are. But for everybody else who is just like, oh shit, I had no idea. Maybe that will make them change a little bit of how they think about things. That was probably the way I lined it up. Hey, you're going to have to judge me first for real before you judge me based on this thing that you don't know about.
Do we do that now with people and their political views? Because what I've just been thinking about is you're talking, and this is not rehearsed, as everyone knows, with nothing personal. We're just talking here. Mm-hmm. If you think you know somebody and you appreciate what they do professionally, separating art from the artist, and I'm not talking about sexual assault, I'm talking politics only.
Sure.
Politics only. And then you find out that they are huge Trump supporters or huge Harris supporters.
Recently.
Do you then change your view of what they do professionally?
I have changed my view on that over the last couple of months because it has hit home a little bit where, I'm teammates with somebody, I play sports off the field, away from here, and, bonded with this person, and then after, a little bit amount of time, recognize on his social, doesn't vote the same way I do, which is crazy because we're both part of the LGBTQ community. So It's like, wow.
Wears a red MAGA hat?
But no, not quite there.
Okay.
And so what I just did then was just like, well, wait a second. I can't be one of those people, right? I am a people person first. I feel like I know this person quite well. I feel like I like this person. Like bonded, good person. I keep saying person. It's a good dude. I am not going to just flip on him because of the political thing. And the reason I say that is because, like, look, we've lived through 2016. We've lived through those years, whatever. We've seen this all happen. We lived in a time before that where it seemed, for lack of a better term, more normal, right? Less chaotic in politics. I don't know if everybody is fully informed, even still, to the point where you can say, wow, I'm judging you based on that. Like Nick Wright was on Dan's show recently and said it's okay to judge people by their politics. I am now thinking the exact opposite because I don't think it's their politics. I think people have gotten so caught up in whatever the argument is, all right? Because it's not all encompassing. It's never all encompassing because if you throw in everything, then it's going to be stuff that they don't want to talk about. It's going to be stuff that makes them feel dirty. So you just sort of
or that they don't understand,
or that they don't understand, and so you're just going to navigate through the conversation. I think now we have to recognize that. I don't think we can fully. I know there's all this information out there, but part of what, blame whomever you want to blame, part of what the job that they did by sort of making people question media is people are convinced that stuff that you tell them that is 100% factual might not be. So now the basis of all these conversations are just lost because they're just kind of, they're floating around with half-truths and mostly opinions. And so you can't really talk that out of people at this point.
So isn't this going through your head, though, as you are thinking about your path? So I want to get back to your fame's increasing. You're still in the closet thinking about, all right, I think I need to let people judge me for my professional work. But clearly your profession is on an upswing. It has to be in your mind. How are people going to react? How's my employer going to react? Mm-hmm. It's a nightmare that you have to think about these things, and I want to make sure you understand where I come from, that I want you to be judged. I judge people every day as someone who ran a team or someone who's in this industry now, and I don't care if they are black, brown, white, tall, short, man, woman, they, them. I want numbers. I want results. It really doesn't matter to me.
Right.
And so I get criticized for that plenty, and that's fine. But people confuse empathy with business. Mm-hmm. But it sounds like you're making a calculation.
I have faith in people, David, like in overwhelming faith in people. There are going to be a handful that are going to disappoint you. There are going to be a handful whose past traumas have affected them so much that they can't be, whatever you want to say, fixed or what have you, or adjusted or anything. And so,
or they don't think they need fixing.
Right.
There's that too.
So I'm always going to, like you mentioned, I'm always going to play the numbers. I think the numbers are in my favor. I think there's a small percentage of people that you can't change their mind, or maybe, again, maybe too traumatized from their own situations where it's just like, all right, I can't fix that. That's fine. But I just have faith. And it's the only way to really go about things, right? Because if I would have been in complete doom and gloom the entire time, because in a sense I was a bit of doom and gloom, but there always had to be sort of the bright sort of light at the end of the tunnel in order for me to come out, right? What's the point?
What was your light, though? What was your light at the end of the tunnel? Was it the actual living your true life? Was it more professional accomplishment? Was it a combination? What was your light?
That's a great question. It was, see, I like to separate my profession from my life because you can't combine the two.
Tell me about that, because I do combine mine. That is my life.
You shouldn't, because then everything at work defines who you are, like measures whether it's a good day or a bad day because of something. You don't have to work.
How do you measure it? I don't know how else to measure it.
I don't. I check in on myself. Hey, how are you feeling? How's today? How's right now? You know what I mean? Because if I've accomplished a decent amount. So have you. We've both accomplished a good amount in our lives to where if we were to like transfer our accomplishments and our sense of success to other people who haven't done as much, they would feel effing great about themselves.
It's all frames of reference,
of course. Exactly correct. And so it's just like you got to continuously remind yourself of this perspective and everything that you're in, all the way down to like just humanity in general. Like if things get way too serious for me, I just start thinking sort of existential. Like I start... It helps because it makes you, people talk about it all the time, it makes you realize how small you are. It's not about being small. It's about, I'm just somebody in this world, and I have no idea if I have another one. Like, based on all numbers, 40 years from now, I'm done.
More.
What the hell's the point if I can't enjoy while I'm here? And so you just have to figure out what level of enjoyment is. And because I kept myself from man, dating and social, like that's a huge part of the human existence, right? I shut that out for 30 years. Well, I'm not going to be dating at 2 years old, but you know what I mean? Until I was 30. And so now I'm just like, why did I do that?
Wait, I'm sorry. What did you shut out until you were 30?
Relationships, like dating and stuff like that.
You had no dating until you were 30 of any kind.
Before that.
You're talking about falling in love, or you're talking about actually going to a movie?
I'm talking about going to a movie. Like I've dated like maybe 3 or 4 girls in my life, and it was always just, hey, a couple dates, and then that's over. I would never date a guy because I wasn't out, and it would just be, a mind bleep, if you will. And so whenever I sort of wanted to check in on myself on that side, it was, and I think I told this story on South Beach sessions before, but I would go whenever I was out of town, never in town, and once a year, I would pick my once-a-year gaycation, if you will. And if I'm on the road, I'm going to pick one bar to go to and just go there, experience it, talk to people, see what happens. And then I did that 4, 5, 6 years in a row. And then 1 year, it just sort of led to the events that eventually led
were you ever recognized in the gaycations?
That is a great question. If I was, I completely blocked it out. Because that was like heavy ESPN days.
But you were columnist, though.
I was a columnist.
So you think going on the road.
I thought the
no
percentage
one reads
was
the
pretty
Herald,
small.
but it's not pre-internet.
It's not.
So
You're right.
people had an opportunity to maybe know. And you have a look about you that very good looking and very noticeable.
This is why I would circle around the place for about 5 minutes, 5 times before I actually would go in. I'd be like,
to
oh,
make
man,
sure.
what's going to happen here?
What's my exit strategy?
Yeah, so all of that
But
would
you
happen.
chose an industry where there's a winner and a loser every night.
Yeah, I know. You would think I hate myself based on what I chose, but I literally just chose. I went into college thinking I could do anything I wanted to, but then it wasn't until my junior year that I said, I'm just going to do something that's fun, and I only read about sports, watch sports. I'm just going to get into sports media, and that's what I did. But getting back to your question about when I decided to be the sort of open book, so I went through the whole, like, I wrote what I called a blog entry. I didn't have a blog. I just, downloaded some art, went online and created this blog page and wrote my coming out. And that whole thing was a process that took weeks and weeks. Like, I would write something, I'd hate it, and I just throw it
How
away.
long does it take to do a regular column? Just to give frame of reference. Just to do one of your columns.
2 hours.
2 hours for
3
a column
hours,
of how
maybe?
many words?
Ooh, wow, word count is a long time ago.
About
1,200?
1,200 words.
Let's see.
And the essay on coming out was how many words?
That's a good question. It was probably closer to maybe about
2,000?
2,000. Yeah.
2,000 is what I figured. So 2 hours for 1,200 and 2 weeks for 2,000.
More than 2 weeks. Like I would
More
I
than
would
2
write
weeks.
it and then just like not. I would get too emotional. I would say, I would try to say too much at once and wouldn't be able to sort of flesh things out.
A column you wouldn't have liked. You wouldn't have approved for your
wouldn't.
1,200.
No.
It didn't meet your standards of
No.
what you had built for yourself.
No, not
because it
until
was
I
about
finally,
you.
Right. And then when I finally sent it, and I don't know how many people can experience this. I think it's all relative, right? So anybody who has this coming out probably thinks like the weight of the world is on them. But for me, like, it was literally like, hey, I handed this out to a bunch of my friends, including Dan. I said, hey, can you just post this and just see what happens? And if anybody would ever get to, and I call this get to, like it's something that you would want to do, experience that level of vulnerability to just be like, here's something, and you just go hide and be like, how are you going to deal with that? How's everybody going to deal with that? I got in my car, by the way, and went like shoe shopping down in
That's how you dealt with it?
Miami,
And
then just like
little retail
every
therapy?
time the phone stopped, I would check my Twitter and be like, okay, good, that's mostly positive. And then it wouldn't be for a couple of hours where I will go back and check it again. But I think it was then that I decided, well, what's the point of keeping other things private, right? If I've already told you my most vulnerable secret, and it's like, here you go, and I'm completely out of control at that point. What opinions people have, unless I go back in there and just fire away, which is not going to help much. Whatever it's going to be made, and it's going to be out of my control. And so I guess what sort of processed through me was, well, why the hell keep anything else private? Like, people are going to judge regardless. You might as well have the full picture. Here you go. Here's everything you need to know about me. I'm not going to keep anything
There's a
private.
long bridge between that epiphany and being in the public eye.
Mm-hmm.
You can have the epiphany that I'm going to live my best life. I'm going to have honesty in my life, but I'm not going to be a public figure.
Uh-huh.
And so you didn't
I
just
went reverse
cross-
angle. I was already a public figure, so I had to find a way to navigate through this.
But you had made the decision. Where I was trying to get to, and I did it in a clumsy way, is you did everything backwards, it feels like.
Yeah.
And you made it almost harder for yourself that you wanted to test everybody. Hey, I'm a professional. I'm an accomplished guy. I'm around athletes. Now I'm going to throw something in there, and now I dare you to not like my 1,200 words.
I would say that if you paint it that way, I'm not going to argue with you, because subconsciously maybe I was. But I really think I was just compartmentalizing and saying, I really like this. I love basketball. I love the fact that people, when I write about it, keep promoting me. Like, they keep hiring me, and I'm just like, I must be doing something right. My subjects, when I interview them, seem to like what I'm doing. I'm enjoying this. The other part was something, because I've set it aside my whole life, was just like, all right, because you got to remember, I was 22 when I started. Like, I covered the Marlins for a year at 22.
What year did you cover the Marlins?
2000.
Okay.
It was a John Henry.
Before
it was,
I got there. That's John Henry.
John Henry. It was Mark Kotze, Mike Lowell, Derek
That's
Lee,
it.
Louis Castillo, an all-star bunch. great crew. But So I'm 20, and when I got to the Heat, I was 23, and when I got to the Miami Herald, I believe I was 24, 25. And so, man, like, all these things are new. Like, I don't have everything figured out. Like, I'm just going along. And so when I figured I had to finally combine the two, it was a full decade had passed, and I'm like, all right, so I probably did this backward, but I don't mind it. Like, I used to be so proud when, like, Dave O'Brien, who's now with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, like, the first day when I was at the Marlins beat, he was like, geez, whatever happened to paying your dues? And I was just like, that's right, I got this damn gig. And so it was just different. Like, I don't know. I guess compartmentalizing is a skill that people maybe could learn or need to learn, but I was able to do that just at a young age, probably because I did it my whole life. It's like, hey, here's my life, and it's all genuine. I'm not faking it. I'm just omitting this one.
I wonder whether trauma brings compartmentalization, because I've always compartmentalized, and I didn't have the sexual issue. I had whatever family growing up issues that I had. But when you're around athletes, one thing that we would talk about, and it was never talked about when I first got into the game back in 1999. We didn't talk about players feeling safe, comfortable. We didn't talk about media feeling safe or comfortable. There was a level of behavior that I regret unbelievably, and it would be dismissed as locker room, clubhouse antics is how we covered all sorts of sins. And there were things that happened in front of writers all the time when the clubhouse was open to the media. And I'm thinking about how you experienced that and how that informed your both biases or informed your timeline in terms of your life, because it's not all that friendly in there.
It's not. And because of the accessibility, the Marlins is the only clubhouse where I actually think about this, or locker room, because I never really had any situations in a basketball locker room where I ever really even had to think about it. But in that baseball locker room, I mean, you know this, the writers are there. I don't know if they still are, but they're there all hours of the day. Like, the access is way too much. And you got people in there just standing there because they're afraid somebody else might be getting something.
And they're literally just standing there.
Yes, just literally
in a group with
there.
other beat writers.
Right. And so, and this was my first beat, right? So I had already experienced, like, Howard Schnellenberger asking me, if I'm queer because I had an earring. So I was like, okay, but it's Howard Schnellenberger. He's an old guy, whatever. You get into that baseball clubhouse, and it's like everything else that's happening, whether it be, them joking around, or I think I was in a Colorado Rockies clubhouse where they were just watching porn and the big TV in the back. Like, none of that stuff really got to me, bothered me, or whatever. It's the times, for example, like Antonio Alfonseca, who told me to take the earring off because people would think I'm like this. And I'm like, bro, like, you don't even know what you're saying to people. Like, and no, all due respect to Antonio Alfonseca, it's like, baseball is your thing. It's not education, right? So I don't know his history or whatever, but I'm supposed to take life advice from Antonio Alfonseca? Like, that's not, like, what are you doing, bro? Like, you don't even know me that well. He just decided to tell me that because he knew I was Dominican. And so he was like, oh.
Wait, did he do that in Spanish?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that what I got the most from those experiences is I just sort of looked around and broke down the clubhouse. And I'm like, most of these guys, maybe not most, some of these guys are maybe high school education, also from another country, probably a Caribbean, Latin country, or high school here. And where great athletes probably didn't give a shit about school, straight to the minor leagues, and, probably around a bunch of people who speak in stereotypically, male stuff. And so it's just like, I'm just looking at the makeup of the room and setting my expectations.
So this is so good to hear, because what you're saying is you're willing to excuse behavior because of circumstance and because of situation. And I was that way too. And that's a terrible way to be.
But it's not excusing behavior as much as it is sort of pointing it out and then working on it, right? Because this is what I actually wanted to ask you. Because one of people that just influenced my life growing up, even though I didn't know him until probably 6 years ago, who just recently passed away, was Billy Beane. And Billy Beane was
just for our audience, and we talked about it when Billy Beane passed away, not the GM of the Oakland A's,
correct.
Not Brad Pitt, not Moneyball.
The former player who came out shortly after.
And he was hired when I was in baseball to be the first face of inclusion, diversity within baseball, and he would meet with teams only if teams would agree to meet with him.
Did you have those meetings?
Of course.
Okay. How were those received? What was the result of those meetings?
So, no one's ever asked me that, and I've spoken to Billy about this, so I can say it even after his passing. We did it because we didn't want to be one of the teams which didn't do it. I didn't want to be known as a team that didn't want to do it. But I did nothing. I did nothing to follow up. I did nothing to try to make the clubhouse safer. And this is not a South Beach Sessions, or we're not. I did nothing that I should have done because I checked a box.
Right.
Later on, as I got older, I was young. And as time passed, I examined and I spoke to Billy about this, that we don't do enough in baseball, because what I learned when I first got into baseball, it didn't occur to me that any of our players were gay.
Right.
It didn't occur to me. When I was done 18 years later, I was fully aware that every clubhouse has gay players. Every one of them on every team.
Yep.
And that's an unbelievable epiphany. You have to picture being an executive. You're the president of a team, watching yourself get older while the players are staying the same age. Like being a teacher or professor, it's a mind bleep when everyone stays the same but you get older. And then me realizing that every preconceived notion I had about a clubhouse and about a team or a company, every one of them was wrong.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my main overriding point on this is, like, we obsess with athletes and what they think about anyway, right? Like, you got to think about who these guys are. They were mostly, probably, like, superstars in high school, lauded, everybody loves them.
Best player on every team they were on.
Yes. Knew that was their profession, right? And you just sort of live and grow and learn as you go. They, in their minds, first of all, they're busy succeeding at this crazy level with all kinds of pressure, okay? And they've already done that, so they've got that feeling of, you can't tell me anything.
They have a lot of money.
And in the middle of their job, which they have worked so hard to get to, now you're going to be like, hey, by the way, you are spokespeople for America, and the way you treat this minority matters, so educate yourself on it, change any predisposition that you might have had, while still being great at what you do. It's too much. Like, it's a lot to ask of these players, and they shouldn't be the ones responsible for why LGBTQ people are accepted or not. And so,
that's Billy's message. That was Billy's message.
I think
to
anybody
the
in our
players.
shoes would say that. Like, we are not asking you to, like, to study, sociology and work on
or to reverse hundreds of years of prejudice.
Correct. And so I'm not blaming them, or it's like you're saying, I'm not allowing for this type of behavior. I'm recognizing it, if it was me, and then individually dealing with it, right? Because you can't just go over this one general message to a group of people and expect it to hit the same. Like, if there's somebody in that group who's showing behaviors of whatever you want to call it, a phobia or whatever, or just not accepting, then we address it individually. And you go, and then if that becomes more of a conversation throughout the clubhouse or an example, that's how people learn things most of the time, not just by telling them something is true and saying, hey, this has to be the way you do things.
We would address, just so you know, and another mistake, we would address racial tension in our clubhouse all the time. We would never address sexual tension. And the only type of sexual attention that I gave in the clubhouse is when there was inappropriate behavior toward women.
Right.
That I'm going to talk about with players, both as a group and individually. The different cliques in the clubhouse, where you've got Spanish speakers, you've got the Americans, the non-Americans, because the cliques exist.
In the baseball clubhouse,
it's
makes
real.
It so difficult.
It's real. It's a high school cafeteria in there,
Mm-hmm.
and you pay attention to where lockers are. I mean, it's a whole different world, and I talk about it on Nothing Personal because my perspective is so different now than when you're in it, and so Billy Beane was hired. Getting back to Billy Beane, and I'm so happy to be talking about him with you. He was hired to try to change something where no one was interested in change.
Right. And the people who were not interested in change would look at him and be like, oh, okay, that's the former player who was gay. Okay, it's important to him.
Next.
Right, next thing.
It was that's from 2 to 2:15 during spring training.
Yeah, and this
Billy
is
Beane meeting.
why I think the Pride Nights are important because it takes that little meeting room and it just puts like humans involved in it. And it's just like, if you actually look around, if you're a player, if you actually look around in the courts or in the seats while you're playing, like you'll see a bunch of people that are just, man, it's very rare that minorities get celebrated like that and just like embraced. And it's just like, if ever I'm in a Pride Night, I feel effing great. I don't care if it's like half the people in there are faking it. I'm just like, you're here for like to celebrate
because you
me
feel
and that
you're
I
in the
exist.
majority, right?
Yes. It's just, and like I was just on a gay cruise recently, my first one ever, and it's like I didn't think about it until we got off the boat. I was like, oh crap, I forgot. Not everybody in the world is gay. Because it's a crazy feeling. I've never experienced it of just like just existing and never having to worry about anybody judging you or anything like that. And it's just like, wow, this is a nice place to be, like a nice place to live.
But everybody wants that.
Yeah.
So what you're calling is just comfort, and that is. But I would push back for 1 second to talk about this. That sort of thinking is how problems get created, which is, my kids, not my kids, talk about anybody. My school experience was with mostly Jewish people. Mm-hmm. So I was under the impression that everybody knew Jewish people.
Right.
And I went on Survivor, and I made a friend. I was the first Jew she ever met.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how is that even possible?
Right.
And so, but when you put yourself in one demographic, whatever it is, religion, whatever sexual orientation, doesn't matter. And you start thinking that, this is what it would be like if it were just us.
Well, you said, that's what I'm saying. I just wanted a dose of it, right? I just wanted,
Interesting.
and so like, yeah, I can feel that if I go to a bar or something, but the second you step out that door, you're in the same place, right? I was literally on this floating cruise with thousands of people, and I was just like, wow, this is a cool feeling. I don't need it all the time, don't want it all the time.
But you could have it all the time if you wanted.
If you wanted, sure.
So
I'm with you. That's unhealthy, though.
But it seems unhealthy to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems, and this is one of the things that we try to promote. That's what inclusion and diversity is supposed to be, is that you learn to exist not in the scenario where it's just your type of people.
You don't want to have to wait until you have a kid, and then this kid comes out to you and just like, oh no, I'm not prepared for this. I have no idea. If you just sort of look around and be like, oh, there are examples everywhere I can learn from and just, better. I'm just fully believe that there's always room for growth. Like I'm always never believe like I've got everything figured out. It's just always room for growth and always room to just get more knowledge on things and just be a better person. And that's just what I constantly have faith in humans to be.
I hate a game where you can never win. And if your goal is to constantly be a better person, because people say that also, I want to enjoy every day, or I want to learn something every day, or I want to be a better person tomorrow than I am today. There's no end to that. And if there's too much of your life, that's why I always love sports, because 9 innings, sometimes 10, sometimes 18, there's going to be a winner and a loser.
When you win in life, not in a sports game, when you win in life, where's the tally? Where are you keeping it?
I keep a tally.
That's what I'm saying. It's all you. You can decide whether you feel good or bad. You are the one who are putting that W and an L label on everything. Everything is not sports. You've been in sports your whole life. It's not sports. Everything is not a win and a loss. An argument with your spouse. Yes, at the end of it,
Feels like
somebody
an L
might
to
be
me.
proven
Feels
to be
like
more right than the other.
I was just going to say.
But there's no wins or losses. You're just getting better.
I got strapped with L's almost every argument with my ex-wife, so I disagree with that totally.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I won one argument.
Most people live in that place where they think of things as wins and losses. And I'm just like, that's not how I evaluate myself, because there is no tally anywhere. There isn't.
So you don't pay attention to clicks or downloads or the people reading your stuff as you, it seems like you do. Which is not a criticism.
I recognize it like a human being. I feel good when people like read it and say good things about it. But again, like, is it defining me as a human being? It just so happens that the job that I chose, the profession that I chose, is something that I'm providing a service to other people, and they can judge it. They judge my reading, my writing, my, how I present on television, etc. I could have done something else where it doesn't matter.
That's what's
what people
crazy to
think.
me. The enigma that you are is that you chose something where you are judged on levels that are both physical, they're mental.
But it's not a beauty pageant. I'm not out there saying, just look at me. I am providing entertainment for people as well. I'm
You're
providing
being judged on whether you're entertaining.
But that's fine. That's what I'm doing. That's just the job that I chose. It's the same. It's like if I'm a gymnast and I literally get scores, right? That's
by
fine.
judges.
That's what I chose to do. But when I walk away from there, none of that matters. Like if I walk outside and somebody says, "Boy, Izzy Gutierrez, you suck today because of this, this, and that," I'm like, "Yeah, had a bad day at work. What are you gonna do?" And what am I supposed to do? Go hide in the corner and like not enjoy my life for 30 minutes as a timeout punishment? It doesn't matter. And so I'm a pleaser. I want to make other people happy. So when people say that to me, I'm either like, damn, I've got to get better, or maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe they'll watch something else. But it's not like it can't all be on me. Like I can't put that type of pressure on myself and then just live normally. Like it's going to manifest in something else if you just keep applying that type of pressure for yourself when it doesn't matter.
Do you think for 1 minute that we live normally in this industry?
Not enough people do. I feel like kind of Pollyannish when I say a lot of this stuff out loud, but if you actually act this way or think this way, like you'll realize that you are the one putting all this pressure on yourself. You are the one trying to live up to some standard. You're the one counting W's and L's when nobody else is.
So I'm trying to figure out what's next. So when you're thinking about, and you create, when you're a columnist, when you're a writer of any kind, or you're in this business where we create shows every day, it's a blank slate every day. Mm-hmm. We have to start from scratch. There's no building a building where you go home after at 5 p.m. you come back and the rebar that you built is there, and then you put the next floor, the next brick.
Because then Juan Soto will sign a $750 million contract.
It's pretty funny. I feel like I start over every day on Nothing Personal, and it actually makes me feel not good in that I worry every day about earning the minutes of my audience, of our audience that Coke and I have built together for 5 years. I take it so seriously that, of course, I put a W or an L when something feels good or doesn't feel good, and I think about what people say, their input, because they're giving me the most valuable commodity, their time. When you are in the business you are in, you're asking for the same thing. There aren't a lot of jobs where you're asking for someone's time.
Correct.
Money for sure.
If
but
people
time,
are going to be willing to give constructive, and say what you will, if it's criticism, you can take it and make it constructive. If people are willing to give you constructive criticism, no matter how it comes out of them, it still depends on how you receive it. Unless that stranger, because it's not going to be somebody in your life, right? Unless that stranger, like that, has an actual influence on your life, you can just take from that what you will, cut out all the fat, cut out all the insults. You're never going to be friends with this person, and say, okay, there's probably some truth to that.
Why do you say no one in your family? My dad, when he was alive, would listen to the show.
I would just treat it differently.
He
like if my dad
every day
might just curse me out and be like, "Oh, you." First of all, I would probably take it very seriously because it's my father, and nobody else would want to watch me succeed more than him. But again, I wouldn't take it personally, like
our show.
Shouldn't, because it's criticism. But if you think that person in your family wants you to fail, well, then that's a whole different story. But if you are of the belief that you want the same things, they're just trying to get you there in a different way. That's just the way they work. That's just the way they operate. I was 39 when I got divorced. And so most people, when they're at that age, they think they're pretty much fully formed. I started after that dating my current partner, Anthony, and I feel like I've changed a lot, like a good amount.
Are we always going to be? Are you done changing?
No, and that's what I'm saying is I think too many people just assume that, hey, I'm a formed human at this point. I don't need to learn anymore, to adjust anymore. And I'm just like, yeah, no, I'm only now getting started. I think part of that, this is a little bit deeper, but I think like a lot of gay men when they come out in their adulthood call it like a second adolescence because they never really got to go through, the whole dating scene and everything else. And I definitely experienced that in a way, even though I didn't really go through the dating scene. But just being that level of like open and comfortable for the first time at my age,
must feel so
it's
good.
wild.
Free.
It feels good because I experienced the other side of it, but it's wild to think that everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people just felt this way all the time. And I'm just like, all right, everybody has different ways to get wherever they're going. And I learned more on that front later in life than most people probably learned in their teenage years, right? How to be in relationships, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's just a different path. But I think, again, when you really break it down and you talk about, like I said, I've had faith in humanity, but we're literally all in this same thing together. Like there are some wild folks that just some people that like
The outliers.
Again, the outliers.
So you're just saying we live within a standard deviation?
I think we do. I think we do. And
not many people think that. Don't go past that point. You think that that life and existence is standard deviation, and that the outliers are either the rich, the poor, the people who are born in the slums in India versus the people born on Park Avenue. Are those the outliers, or are those people within the standard deviation also?
I think they're all within the standard deviation if they're allowed to. So what I said before is that the folks who were maybe traumatized too much at a young age are the ones. That's if they're traumatized. If they experience something different, like if you're, whatever would you say for folks in India? Where were they?
There's the slums.
The slums in India.
Those are.
If that's all you've experienced, but it hasn't damaged you, and you can still experience other, like you're still part of. I still think all of those folks are still in sort of
within the
standard
main bar of what you're describing
Yes.
as existence.
I think the outliers are not necessarily their position in life, but just how they think. Like I think most people are just good people. Like go watch an episode of Community where they had that debate. But I think humans are good by nature, and so you have to. It's almost like the dog situation, right? The dog people used to think pit bulls were nasty, but no, it's just they're trained to be nasty, right? Or at least those.
It's so wonderful you think that, because the way that you grew up in the closet, it's almost impossible to have that point of view that human beings are good by nature. When you were scared, or for maybe rightly so, maybe wrongly so, it's hard to go back in time and imagine your timeline being different because you chose professionalism and then you backed into what you wanted to do personally. But if you thought that always, that human beings are good, decent people, couldn't you have condensed your timeline or even reversed it?
Yeah, possibly. But I think it takes time to figure that out, right? Because I think where I recognize that is just like I was thinking that the rest of the world was a bunch of me's. And so I feel things pretty deeply.
But you couldn't find any views, could you, growing up?
Any views?
Any yous?
Any yous?
You
No,
said
I
everybody
couldn't.
was a
I
bunch of
couldn't.
yous.
I couldn't find any me's.
So you were alone, thinking everyone was you, but in reality, no one was you.
Yeah. Because they all have their different issues to deal with, right? Mine was mine. And what I recognize is like if you just change the words, it's very similar situations. Everybody has their own traumas, I guess is what I'm saying, right? And it's all based on perspective. Like if you lost a parent at a very young age and it was very devastating for you and it took you on a route that, you wouldn't have otherwise. Okay. For somebody else, something that's not as devastating could still feel the same and still take them on that same path. So I guess my point is, like I said, everybody has their traumas, and we find connection points within those. And I think the more after I came out, the more I just talked to people in general, gay, straight, whatever, the more we recognize these connection points. And it's just like, oh, so like being gay doesn't define me. It just happens to be that this one sort of fight that I had to do because I was gay, right? In the same way that being Hispanic doesn't define me, but I can find connection points with other Hispanics. Or, I recently lost a parent. I can find connection points with people who lost parents, at a certain point in their lives. And so I just don't, I think that anything negative that has been trained into a person, I think is literally trained into a person.
Are we collecting traumas where we're out there looking for partners in trauma? Is that what I'm thinking about this for the first time. Is that what support groups are? Where you are just trying to have it handed to you on a silver platter. The people going through the same trauma you are, so you don't have to go out looking for them because they're all out there. but it just saves time. It's like a gay cruise. It saves time. Everyone's on the ship, and you don't have to go find them.
I'm never thinking of it in those terms at the time, but I think, or people aren't, but I think that's probably something that is true subconsciously.
So I'm thinking about now how we can make things easier. The stigma associated with trauma groups, it's not actually a stigma. It should actually be presented. And this is going back to Billy Beane. I think we presented it all wrong. And the way we handled players was all wrong. But the way you could actually do it is normalize. Normalize, not addiction, normalize, and I'm not talking about that particularly, but any sort of trauma. Can you imagine if we lived in a world that it was always the gay cruise?
Well, I think we're seeing that now. Just in our television, you consume a lot of movies and whatnot. I think we are a lot more, maybe not so subtly. When I say we, I just mean American movie makers.
Because a small we, very small.
Like you're seeing a main character go throughout a show, and then you find out 3/4 of the way, oh, he or she was abused and had to. It's like, oh, that happened to me. That happened to this person. And they're just basically normalizing that, normalizing people that have gone through traumas, have existed normally, and then are just like, oh, by the way, yeah, this happened to me too. It effing sucked. And so, like, the results, you can't play the results, right?
See, everybody gets abused, though, where, and I don't mean that as a double entendre, where people can use their trauma, whether they use, easy trauma with parents as a reason why they're good parents or bad parents or different parents, or I was abused, therefore I'm an abuser. That's another one that comes up where you're asked to defend somebody or to think about them differently because of their traumas. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I've struggled with is having people explain away behavior. Because what it does is it makes you less responsible for that behavior.
Right.
And so I get criticized for that, but people who have a proclivity to be anti-LGBTQ, it's because they were brought up and so they excuse the way they feel because they grew up in a place where that's how everyone felt. And I hate that.
If I'm not excusing that behavior, again, I'm pinpointing the source of it. Like you said, this person probably grew up in an anti-LGBTQ home and has zero information or zero feelings as to what it would be like on that other side. And it's like, all right, either you're willing to hear me out, either you're willing to recognize that there are different types of experiences out there, or you're not. If you are, then that past is not, it's just the starting point. You can still adjust a person's thinking or at least open their eyes to other things. And again, the way I like to put it is, you don't want to have to wait until it's a family member of yours or a child of yours that forces you to confront it. Like, go ahead and recognize that there are a ton of other human beings out there experiencing it. It's like, oh, they can't all be evil people. They can't all be they can't all be sinners that choose to live. No, like, open up your mind a little bit and recognize that there's something different. And I think I just think you don't have enough faith in people being willing or being able to change their minds. And I'm not saying as a collective, I'm saying it's a slow drip. Like, it's from one person, maybe down the road they affect somebody else, maybe down the road they affect somebody else. But I can't change all that, so I'm not going to sit in the misery all the time.
But the biggest difference between us in this is that you have everyone as decent and good within the standard deviation. That's the theme that I'm coming away from this conversation, which I can't believe we're about to be out of time. It's that I don't have that same faith.
Sure.
Because it's been exhibited to me that I've been proven. My tally tells me. My one-loss tally tells me that it's misguided to have that faith.
In my mind, I'm my biggest critic. In my mind, I walk out of work every day saying, I suck today, I got to get better. Maybe there's one or two things I can hang my hat on, but that's about it. So I don't really care about the other critics. Like, I know the business. I know what makes good. I know what makes it bad. I know when I'm good or bad. I never really think that highly of myself. So the fact that I'm here in this position, I'm always grateful for it. And so if people want to, like, I'm just not going to sit in that misery. I'm not. I make that choice.
Well, I don't want you to ever sit in misery. I appreciate that you took the time. It's an interesting discussion for the audience to think about, for me to think about.
No, you said 50 minutes will feel like 10. I'm not kidding. I thought it was 5 minutes. I thought we were 5 minutes in.
It's it.
It's crazy.
Thank you. We'll do this again. Thank you, Izzy.